All right, welcome to it. Welcome to Level Up with Miss K. And you know what we Saturday morning from 9 until 11 o'clock. We definitely are here and giving you the best time of your life and also starting your Saturday groove and mood going. And this is a show where we have fun with no harm. And welcoming you to the show, and mine is to definitely greet you and welcome you to Level Up. And as you probably on your screens, I am not alone. I am with such an amazing woman. Rather, I am with a very important person in our society. In our society, her name is Kayla Eberhardt, and I would like to welcome you. How are you doing this morning?
Hi there. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. Feeling a bit stressful, and I think that relates very well to this podcast. But we'll see
The
how it goes.
coincidence.
A
The
little bit.
coincidence of you actually feeling very stressed and I'm trying. And I have to say, and to anyone else who is listening out there, that this month is actually Stress Awareness Month, in case you didn't know. And this is a month where we definitely try to educate ourselves and open ourselves up to more knowledge that has to do with anything stress related, and also equipping each other as well as giving each other also ways in which we can deal with stress. Because amongst other things, I do think that that is where everything starts that has to do with mental health related issues. Because we deal with anxieties, we deal with depression, but I do think that there's always somewhere where everything starts. So I'd like to start by asking if you could actually just introduce yourself. Know who exactly is this?
All right, cool. So my name is Kayla Eberhardt. I am a registered counselor, currently based in Port Elizabeth, Gqeberha. I'm working from a practice in Summerstrand, but I'm actually originally from East London. So
Yes.
yeah, that's a little bit
Oh,
about me.
our very own.
Yeah,
Our very own. And I must say, before we definitely waste any further time, can we get into today's business, of which today the business we're standing on is everything stress awareness and
yeah.
stress relief. So can we start by just unpacking and defining what is it that maybe when you feel or experience, you could point that and say, this is stress. How do we define stress?
Okay, well, stress is usually caused from a stressful event. So whether it's the sudden experience of seeing a snake on your path, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, fight or flight!" I'm in a stressful, particular situation. But it's this feeling of being feel like intense, overwhelmed, worn out, exhausted, and something so small like seeing the stressful snake that's about to bite you. That's what can cause stress. So the
Yes.
symptoms can obviously be range from like this mild um, thing of feeling anxious. I'm starting to sweat. I've got a headache. I've got the chills. My stomach is a bit sore, or it can actually lead to something more severe like anxiety and depression.
Oh yes, oh yes, very much interesting. I have to say that obviously before or when you feel those things, there's definitely something that causes you to feel like those kind of feelings or experience whatever it is that you go through or experience. What could be some of those possible causes of a person stressing out, or what is it that we can identify as some of the causes that cause us to go and go through that and experience those kind of feelings?
Yeah. The thing is, everyone is completely different. So your stress trigger could be completely different to mine. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm in a tough position at work and I'm handling staff and everyone's getting a bit chaotic, I don't know how to control or, speak to my staff. That could be stressful for me. But another thing that could be stressful for another person would maybe be I'm late for work. I don't know what to cook tonight. So
Yeah.
it's very different, and I think what you're referring to are like symptoms. So symptoms that like maybe like trigger our brain and say, listen, okay, I'm in a stressful situation. Is you start sweating. Your chest
Yes.
goes red, for example. I go red. I'm red right now. So that's
Yes.
a physical symptom that gets portrayed in our body, and then there's other physical or behavioral symptoms like nail biting, stuff like that would put you on a path and say, listen, okay, I know I'm in a stressful situation right now. What can I do?
Yes. All
Yeah.
right. And in you saying you will identify and know that, obviously, by me experiencing those feelings and going through whatever it is that I go through at that moment, definitely I know there is something that is stressing me out. And I guess it takes someone to actually dive deep into, obviously, your mental state and also just generally your environment for you to identify what it is that is actually stressing me out. And amongst those things, what could then be some of perhaps the type of stresses that we experience as people in general? That would be things that stress you out, as well as the types of stresses, if we do have such.
Hmm. So like I'm gonna break it down into like two different categories, which is your acute stress and your chronic
Mhm.
stress. So your acute stress is usually brief, but it's intense. So it's short-term stresses. So it's like someone giving a speech that's gonna put you in an immediate, quick, acute stress, like situation. Getting
Yes.
into an argument, studying for a test, but then also taking into consideration stress isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah.
Stress can actually
I was actually
motivate
about
you.
to get into that to say, in as much as we one way or the other, we always experience something that is stressing us out. Is it
Yeah.
always as a result of something negative? And stress, is it always something negative generally in our bodies and basically in our minds?
I think not necessarily. When I was talking about this stress could possibly be a good stress. For example, I'm just going to use me as an example because it's the easiest. I'm a procrastinator, so I
Yeah.
need some level of stress to get me into a position where I'm like, oh no, I actually need to study right now. So that
Mhm.
stress is good stress in that moment. However, if it becomes a chronic stressor, so now chronic stress is it's long lasting. Okay,
Mhm.
it's not as intense in that moment.
Mhm.
So that's how we differentiate between it. So that's could possibly be from difficult job, financial stresses, an unhealthy
Mhm.
relationship, maybe constantly finding yourself in arguments. Now that
Yes.
is something that's called chronic stress, and that's not necessarily good because that can lead to anxiety, depression, heart disease, etc. For example. So I hope I answered your question. But I mean, good stress is giving you that anxiety to get going. Like, okay, I'm late
Yeah.
for work. I need to get off my bed right now and I need to make myself ready to get to work. That's a good stress.
I think it was very important for us to definitely try and distinguish and also get clarity in terms of, is it always a negative thing or a positive, or is it also it can be two-way, whereby it is a positive and a negative thing as well. But now we've definitely identified and been, I guess, answered in a sense that yes, it can be negative, but sometimes it can be such a positive thing, because obviously as a person procrastinator, I'm a procrastinator myself, whereby you are going to get to a moment where you realize that, shucks, actually, I am going to be writing a test in the next few maybe hours. Therefore, I
Yeah.
need to push, or in the next few days. Therefore, I need to push. Maybe I've known this for a month and I left it for like the last week. So that gets you going. It gives you the adrenaline to
Mm.
actually get going. And now, when it comes to a person's functionality, mentally as well as physically as well, is there a way that stress affects one's functionality?
I think if we look at now just regarding the acute stress, there is functionality that is imposed on or affected. We look at like the physical, we look at the emotional, we look at the cognition or cognitive, and then we look at the behavioral. So
Yes.
that's like purely looking at the symptoms. So if we
Hmm.
look at, just for example, for a few of the physical ones, we look at back pain, we look at sweating, we look at nausea, we look at chest pain and fatigue. Okay. So that's how it would affect your functionality. Emotionally, we look at irritability, anger, there's like loss of motivation, memory problems, for example. And
Hmm.
then the last factor is behavioral. So I've mentioned nail biting because it is something that I can relate to.
Yeah.
Rest, restlessness, teeth grinding, social withdrawal, and even as far as going to like substance use. So those are the symptoms that could possibly affect your functionality as a human being.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you look at obviously a human being being affected holistically, because you do mention physically, emotionally, and so forth. And I do think
Yeah.
that it's very important for us to identify, sit down, reflect, and actually do some self introspection in terms of the things that you deal with on a day to day basis, and actually try and identify in your holistically, how then does that stress, or how then are you affected by the things that you experience on a day-to-day basis. If you've just joined us, I want to welcome you to the show. The name of the show is definitely Level Up with Miss K, and today we are talking everything stress awareness, and everything stress related, from coping mechanisms to actually defining what stress is. And right about now, it is definitely 25 minutes after the hour of 10 o'clock, and on your screens you might definitely be seeing not one but two faces. Definitely, there is Kayla Eberhard, registered counselor, who is helping us actually unpack and definitely inform us and expand our knowledge horizon in terms of stress and what it could be, that we could define as stress, and also some of the ways in which we relate to stress on a day to day basis. Also, I just want to know, or rather, I'd like to ask you to guide us on ways that one could productively actually deal with stress, as well as some of the coping mechanisms that one can actually use to cope with stress.
Okay, so we can look at maybe stress management tips first. So just keep in
Hmm.
mind that stress isn't a bad thing, and I think always having that at the top of your head is a good thing, and it
Hmm.
almost keeps you in check so that you're able to do some introspection to maybe evaluate whether this stress is a good or bad thing before
Most
panicking and
definitely.
going like, I am in such a stressful situation, I'm not going to be able to cope. So keep that in
Right.
mind. Talk
Mhm.
about your problems. So even if they won't be solved at the moment, talk about it. Call up a friend and say, listen, I'm in this stressful situation. Do you have any advice? And I think as human beings, we're constantly looking for solutions. Sometimes there aren't solutions. Sometimes we just need to talk. And I
Right.
think keeping that in mind is very important. Prioritize your responsibilities. If you're studying for a test and you've got 10 chapters to get to, maybe prioritize doing two a day. So having a bit of a
Mhm.
schedule, that relieves the stress. Focus on the basics. Focus on your nutrition. Focus on, healthy eating. Focus on getting your body moving to release those good endorphins. Um, Set aside time for yourself. So we talk about self-care a lot.
Mhm.
It's so important to look after yourself. Do stuff that almost revive you, make you feel
Mhm.
well. You can't, this saying that you can't give of yourself if your glass isn't full. So look after your glass, fill up your cup.
Oh,
And
most
then
definitely.
yeah, so then we can look at relaxation techniques. We look at coping mechanisms such as guided meditation, taking deep breaths, um, and there is a whole lot of relaxation techniques that I could go into, but I'm not going to. Just it's going to be easier not to. But if
Yeah.
you are interested, there are lots of resources out there for you to look at the different relaxation techniques. Stuff like progressive muscle relaxation that you can do in the evening before you go to bed to release you from your stressful day that you've had. I hope
Mhm.
that answers the question.
Most definitely it does. And also on our Facebook, we do have a few people joining us. Actually, Sandy Sohlahla joining us, as well as Stora was a BJ, as well as Ayanda Jahabe Kihlongwane. And also, we do have also Spumeza Storman. Welcome you to the show. And also, Sebulela, that you joined us this morning. And we're talking everything stress related, from coping mechanisms to defining what stress is, and also just looking at ways in which we can best take care of ourselves. As definitely Kayla has said, that taking care of yourself goes beyond just you probably creating content, self-care content, but it actually
Yeah,
needs you to be very intentional about it, and actually be on the go in terms of you actively and intentionally taking care of yourself. And I love the fact that you mentioned that you can't pour from an empty cup. So it always takes one to really fill their cup, take care of themselves holistically, so spiritually, mentally, physically, and so forth, for you to be able to pour into the next person's cup. Right. And I love the fact that I guess from just this first few minutes that we've had together, there's a lot that I've learned a lot already, and I've gained so much in terms of how then does one deal with stress? How then does one identify stress? And also the fact that stress is not always a negative thing. Which is
Mm,
something I guess it's very important for us to know and note, because we always see it and deem it as such a negative thing,
mm.
to experience stress. Now, before we close it, I'd like to know just one last question: is there something as ever too much stress or too little stress?
Okay, so then then we go into the chronic stress. So
Mhm.
now the chronic stress is where it becomes a little bit of a concern. So when the stress is prolonged or usually lasting way too long,
Mhm.
and the symptoms aren't like intense in that moment, like the acute symptoms. It's more or less like I have this constant anxiety, I have this constant stress within me. Now, that is something that would need to be looked at for you to do some introspection and then possibly either look at your coping mechanisms, what you can do to, relieve that long lasting chronic stress. And then there's also obviously the opportunity to see someone for it, psychologist to
Mhm.
help you best deal with that stress.
All right, there seems to be a bit of a technical glitch there. I am not too sure, but I love the fact that she mentions that there's a lot of other ways in which you can look after yourself and make sure that you are well taken care of emotionally, psychologically, and so forth. And sometimes it just takes you speaking out and you sharing and actually venting to the next person, which is it could be someone close to you. And if not, maybe you are a person with trust issues and stuff like that. Definitely, counselors, psychologists are people that are there to actually help us get through some of the things that stress us out, as well as just generally seeking help in the best way you know how. Because, like I said, it could be maybe seeking psychological services could be a bit too expensive for you, but I'm sure in every other city and every other place that we might be residing in, there is definitely services that you could get for free. I know, for instance, in East London, there are places that you can go to that offer counseling services and so forth, to help one deal with whatever mental health issue they have. So now, for those who are actually in PE, and maybe those who are not in PE, who would like to be in contact and get in contact with you or in your services, how do we find you? Where do we find you?
All right, so we've actually got a Facebook page and an Instagram page called Eberhard Wellness and Counseling. The nice thing about us is that we work with the clients, so we don't have a standard rate unless you're a medical aid patient. So we work with you, whatever you can afford. We discuss it with you, and then we go with that. So we're about the people. We're about helping and making mental health available and accessible to everyone. I don't believe that mental health care should be for the privileged or
Certain.
be only a privilege. So that's my ethos. So
Oh,
yeah, Facebook, Instagram. You can maybe send us an email on info at abar.co.za. So that's how you get to us.
all right, all right. I love that. Like you heard, also you can get in contact with them. They have a Facebook and an Instagram page. It's Eberhard Wellness, right?
Yeah, and counseling.
Wellness and counseling. And I just want to know, because obviously counseling now, or rather things have evolved. Do you only deal with like people who physically come to your offices, or do you also offer online services as well, in terms of like online counseling services and so forth?
Yeah, 100%. So we obviously see our patients at our practice, whoever can make it. Otherwise, we do online counseling. It's completely up to the clients. Even if they're in PE, basically PE, and they're like, I don't feel like coming into the office, it's too intimidating. That's fine. We do online counseling.
Oh, I love that. I think definitely, if you're still stressing after this interview, child, it's your choice, honestly, because there is a lot that we've definitely taken away from this. And I think for me, what stood out is the fact that you do not have to have a solution For as long as you talk about something, and as long as you make sure that you don't harbor it, for
Mm.
it to give birth to other things that might affect your health and generally your holistic wellness, you need to speak to someone, be it a counselor, be it a friend, be it a family. And also, there's also Eberhard Wellness and Counseling that offers services. Both online and face to face. Also, you can definitely get in touch with them at Eberhard Wellness and Counseling on their Instagram page as well as Facebook page as well. And alternatively, you can send them an email at eberhardcounseling .co.za, right? Oh,
info@eberhard.co.za.
there
Almost.
you there you have it. Thank you so much, Kayla, for definitely spending your morning with us and definitely making a point that you and I make a difference in people's lives in terms of trying to improve people's wellness and also trying to give information and knowledge that we have access to, because obviously we might not have solutions to everything, but the bare minimum that you have and we can share with society, we definitely do that. Thank you so much for joining us this
Thank you.
morning.
All right.
All right, that was definitely Kayla Eberhard of Eberhard Counseling. That is definitely based in Port Elizabeth, and we were talking about everything and anything stress related. And we'd like to thank you so much if you were actually part of this live, and also I did see a lot of people that came in, and thank you so much once again for joining us this morning. But for now, definitely we're killing it. Not for a long time though.